Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Session 2, Day 2. It's a pleasure to be back with you all, and as always, we are going to start immediately with our roll call. So if I could have you read your name into the record and the microphone, I would appreciate it. First up, for student loan borrowers, we have our primary.
Magnus Noble.
And we have our alternate.
Ryan Hofer.
Thank you. For veterans and U.S. military service members, we have our primary.
Julie Howell.
And we have our alternate.
Stuart Helgeson.
Thank you. For organizations representing workforce development needs, we have our primary.
Siri Turgeson.
Thank you. For legal assistance organizations, consumer advocates, we have our primary.
A.D. Matson.
Thank you. For public institutions of higher education, we have our primary.
Monty Sullivan.
And our alternate, Luciana, will be joining us later this afternoon. For private nonprofit institutions, we have our primary.
David Eubanks.
Thank you. And we have our alternate.
Bill Hathaway.
For proprietary institutions of higher education, we have our primary.
Jeffrey Bodemer.
And our alternate.
David Cohen.
For state officials, including governors, we have our primary.
Ray Rodriguez.
And we have our alternate.
Mike Duffy.
Thank you. For institutional accrediting agencies, we have our primary.
Michael McComas.
Thank you. And we have our alternate.
Heather Perfetti.
For programmatic accrediting agencies, we have our primary.
Rebecca Pisaka.
And we have our alternate.
Brian Kessler.
Thank you. For organizations representing taxpayers, we have our primary.
Michael Shires.
And our alternate.
Jim Blue.
Thank you. For nascent accreditation organizations, we have our primary.
Mark Becker.
And our alternate, Jade Foster, will be joining us tomorrow. For National Advisory Committee, we have our primary.
Jennifer Bloom.
Thank you. And from our Department of Education Office of Post-Secondary Education, we have our subject matter expert.
Elizabeth Daggett.
And from the department's Office of General Counsel.
Jake Lalla.
And finally, we have our federal negotiator.
Jeff Andrade.
Thank you. I would like to invite a report out from the caucus yesterday as we concluded in caucus. And then, Jeff, I'd ask you to tee it up where you'd like to get started.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do the report out from yesterday's caucus. I thought it was a very productive caucus. Very high praise for Dave and Dr. Hathaway on their very thoughtful proposal. We discussed it. We discussed possible changes, additional elements that some of the negotiators wanted to see. The department has taken that back, has reworked some of the language, and we will do a walkthrough later today on a counter proposal with that. And so hopefully we can, I think that'll bring us pretty close, but we'll unveil that. I do want to address, I know there's some media reports with regard to the department using strong arm tactics. And as I said in the caucus, I wanted to assure all of you that your family members are safe at an undisclosed location and will be released back to you at the conclusion of the meeting. So thanks. And for the record, that was a joke because I know this is being transcribed. I don't want 20 years from now, some researchers seeing this and thinking that we were serious there. So, okay.
I don't know how to follow that up, Jeff. Okay. Jennifer, why don't you try to follow that up? I see your comment card up. It's a yesterday thing? Okay, perfect. Jeff, where would we like to begin now?
We would like to call a new caucus, and this will be on the conflict of interest language and separate and independent. We would like to have the accreditors at that, as well as the institutions. And I'm trying to think of anybody else. I think that's it. And I'm Scott, and the taxpayers and employers. All accreditors, nascent, programmatic, and institutional. And Jen.
Before we go to that, Monty, I see your card.
Yes, just a very quick question. Can we go back through quickly the schedule for submissions? I think you had indicated yesterday that today at noon would be the deadline. Can we just maybe walk back through that quickly?
Sure. For the big proposals, if you have we'll give it to the end of the day if you have sort of nits, but sort of the more comprehensive proposals, we'd like to have that so we can start to take a look at it and be ready to talk about it tonight.
Thank you, Monty. Thank you, Jeff. So we're going to move into caucus. Might we host it in here?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I am now going to ask everyone not participating in that caucus to please exit this room. And Jeff, an estimate on how much time so everyone can plan accordingly.
Got a pretty big group. Let's shoot for an hour.
Okay, we will try to resume back in this room within the hour. Thank you, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. I want to thank many of you for a very productive caucus, and I want to thank everyone else for their patience. I would like to acknowledge that we now have our alternate, Mr. Jim Blue, at the table for organizations representing taxpayers. With that, Jeff, I'd like to turn it over to you for a report out from our caucus.
Sure. And we'll thank the folks in the audience for indulging us during that long caucus. It was very productive because we had folks sort of on both sides of this issue, sort of sharing their various perspectives and reacting to one another and really trying to get down, including ourselves, trying to get down at what we were trying to achieve and options that were available to us. So that with all of that feedback, the department's in a position now where we can take that input, look at some of the proposals that have come in regarding that, and come back with a counter proposal.
Thank you for that. Where would we like to go next?
So at this point, we would like to share our counter proposal on transfer of credit, which we will put up on the screen. And I just want to check, have we sent this to the negotiators yet? Okay. And it has gone out to the negotiators.
Jeff, as you walk through this, do you want to take comments and questions, or would you like to hold those to the end after you do your walkthrough?
How are we doing for time?
We've got about 30 minutes till the lunch hour.
Why don't you let us walk through it, and then we'll see where we are after walking through it. We can then start on questions, and if we need to do a deeper dive after lunch, we'll do that.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. So what we did on our general approach here is there is a cross-reference with regard to transfer of credit to the student assistance general provisions in 668.43. So we broke up where it was appropriate. Some of the provisions that were in David's proposal, some of them are in E, in the transfer of credit policy in 602.24, and some of them will be in 668.43. And we'll see that as we walk through. So in the first instance in E, we clarified that the transfer of credit policies have provisions that do these things as opposed to the policy that was in Dave's, that language is in Dave's proposal. We think it's an important distinction that we are not prescribing the policies themselves or prescribing what policies, what provisions need to be included. We picked up the language from the proposal with regard to general policies for specific academic standards, and worked that a little bit to include the standards, the time limits, and that's time limits on when credits are earned, and the curricular requirements, that's alignment with the curricula comparability, specific academic standards in this instance would be referring to grades, acceptable grade limits. And so all of those would be disclosed to the student up front in terms of what standards in the disclosure that's currently required in 668.43 on standards of credits, what that contains. Then that goes into the comprehensive statement of the criteria. Some of that's current language. We picked up comparability and applicability, and we also made sure that that credit earned at the institution has to be an agency that's recognized by the secretary. In number 3, again, this was, I think, this was part of our language originally. Then Dave changed it. So there cannot be a policy, the policy cannot across the board deny transfer of credit based on the selectivity of the institution in terms of admissions, for example, or the agent or the accreditation of that institution. No, I'm Scott. Can you scroll down to number 3, please? Sorry, getting a little bit ahead. Okay, stop right there. Thanks. So again, number 4, we still kept this as undergraduate for the time being. Award transfer credit for undergraduate programs for coursework that has been successfully completed at another institution and is comparable in content and learning outcomes to the institution's own course offerings, unless the institution provides a written basis for denial. In number 5, okay, we're still up there, the whole thing's there. We are adding, this is a new requirement. If a student is denied, we are adding the opportunity for a student to appeal within 15 calendar days if the institution declines their credit transfer request. And then if we can go to the next page. And if you can scroll down to 668.43. Just actually, can you, Nicole, I'm sorry, just go up for a second to the, and capture the definition. So prospective students, so 668.43 talks about prospective students in addition to enrolled students. So that's what we mean when we, if the question comes up when you're looking at it, we're just leaving it in there. That's what we mean by prospective student currently. It's an individual that's contacted the institution. So this is essentially consumer information for perspectives. So we'll just scroll down to 43 now. So where we thought this would fit into 43 is currently in A11. We talk, there's a requirement currently that there's a description of the credit transfer policies established by the institution, which must include a statement of the institution's current policies. So we've added to that the remaining elements from Dave's proposal. This one here is dealing with what we talked about in the caucus yesterday, which was a timeline for a student to submit their transcript in order to get a decision at an appropriate time. And that decision would be prior to when the student makes a financial commitment in enrolls at the institution, or registers, whichever is the earlier of the 3. Okay, section 2 would keep the existing criteria. 3 and 4, we would add a number 5, which is in addition to what's already there on the list, the institution would provide a statement whether the institution considers credit earned in a non-degree program or hours completed in a non-credit program for transfer purposes. That's a new element. I think that's important to pick up. But that was in Dave's proposal as well. And then going down to C, this actually gets down to the provision of things specifically to a student. So 3 says if a student submits the transcript in a timely manner to the institution, as they were directed in the prior requirement, the institution will, and it goes through a series of steps. So number 1 is inform the student of the credit that will be awarded for the courses on the transcript. Number 2 is inform the student of credits that have been declined for courses. And then number 3, in the event of a declination of credit, disclose at the estimated time and the courses that would need to be replaced in order to have the credit at that level. And then number 4, again, deals with declining. So if the student, can you scroll down just a little bit more? Thanks. Right there. That's good. If the institution declines to award the credit to a student pursuant to the transfer policy, the institution must provide to the student a written rationale specific to each course that does not result in credit transfer. And that, in the instances where the institution has a policy, let's say with regard to the grades, for example, that could be a simple explanation that didn't meet our grade level requirement. I'm skipping down disclosures. Okay, so this deals with the date. So the disclosures to the student with regard to credit transfer, and this got to the point that we were talking about in the caucus. It is the earlier of signing the enrollment agreement, registration, or making a financial commitment. There's nothing in here that would preclude an institution from, I think this was an example that Magnus had brought in, like for a future cohort to say that they're accepted for this point in the future. It doesn't necessarily have to be sort of the next cohort that's starting at the institution. And then the rest are conforming changes.
Thank you, Jeff. We'll now open it up for questions and comments. Magnus, we'll get started with you.
Thank you. So I really like this language. I appreciate the inclusion of a chance for a student to appeal any denial of transfer of credit. So I want to clarify, there is, let me just make sure I get this section right. So under E, transfer of credit policies, number 5 references the opportunity to appeal. And then later on, it talks about the disclosures to a student that include a copy of the transfer of credit policies at the institution. So for clarity's sake, would those transfer of credit policies include the appeal process, or would the department be open to explicitly adding another Romanet that at a minimum, those policies disclosed to a student would include the appeal process, just to add another safeguard?
Yeah, I think it's redundant, but I don't see anything that would preclude that. I mean, at least that's apparent right now.
Yeah, I mean, just having reviewed some of these policies at various institutions, I think it would be included in there, but just as an additional safeguard to students, adding a short Romanet that said at a minimum these disclosures must include the appeal process or a description thereof, or yeah, that would work too.
Okay, yeah, well, we can work with that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Magnus. Monty, you have the floor.
Thank you. First of all, very, very well done. I think this is precisely what has been needed. I know that certainly will create some additional responsibilities, but I think these are the kinds of things that we can build into process, right, and make part of day-to-day operations. I do have one question for you, and I haven't, maybe I've overlooked it. I know we talked a bit about modality of delivery as being one of the concerns or considerations, or should not be a consideration, maybe in determining transferability of credit. Is it in the document? Is it not in the document? And if so, can we talk a little bit about maybe why it's not there?
Yeah, we didn't I think, quite honestly, I think we were just trying to make sure we tracked as much of Dave's proposals into the right places as possible. So I think some of that, though, gets into the language. If we can go up just a little bit, Nicole, if you have a chance, that deals with not necessarily the selectivity, but the comparability with its own programs. So I think in some instances, it may not be appropriate if that institution doesn't have something that's similar. So there is a recognition that the institute that you can't have credits for something that maybe that institution doesn't offer at all, or does. is
But
outside of
even
the
going
program.
beyond the modalities piece, relying on learning outcomes is the basis for the entire
Yeah.
discussion. So I think that's, you've hit upon the right language, I think.
Okay.
Thank you.
The other thing, and I just want to make it clear, we did drop the language on presuming the transfer that people objected to. So that was taken out.
Thank you, Monty. Thank you, Jeff. David, you have the floor.
Yes, I'd like to add my thanks to the department's very substantial work over the last day. Question about the filter on trying to find the language here. Selectivity, that selectivity was dropped in the version 2, and my proposal had predated dropping that. I'd prefer to drop selectivity if you're still okay with it.
Sure. Would you like to replace it with anything, or
Monty would.
you want to put modality?
No, I think maybe admission standards. I'm sorry. It's okay. I apologize. All right. Maybe admission standards is
Maybe just the institution or something about it, just the
That's
earned
fine.
institution or something,
That's fine.
because that covers, I think, both issues you guys are talking about.
You're right. Thank you.
Thank you, Monty. Anything else, David, before I move on?
Yes. We may, let me find the page number. I have a page number. The provision, the paragraph that says the timeline by which the transcript must be submitted, timely review, make an informed decision prior to a financial commitment, that would often be a deposit. And we don't necessarily know the timing of a deposit, so I'd like to maybe just workshop around how that would work practically.
Okay. Thank you, David. I'm going to continue to move on with our cards. Jennifer, you are next.
Yeah, just in response to Dave, I actually kind of like not workshopping that. And it's mentioned again, because it does say by the earlier, like if you go down to the last page, it does say by the earlier of the date that the student signs an enrollment agreement, completes registration, or makes a financial commitment. So I think it's kind of might be workshop there. If you workshop it, make sure that it's consistent with the lot. If you go to the final page, it's mentioned again. So, and I just want to express thanks to the department for this work. I particularly, I don't think it's anything, but during yesterday's conversation, timing, I expressed it during open session too, timing to the student was something that I felt was incredibly important. The students should not be accepted to institutions and enroll without knowing whether their credits are transferring. And so I very much not only appreciate you including it, but I think it was really, really great that you moved it to the appropriate section and out of the accreditor piece. So that's really where it belongs. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Jennifer. Julie?
Yeah, I'll just echo the sentiments of everybody here. This is great work. Thank you for considering it and taking it so seriously. We submitted, on behalf of students and service members and veterans, submitted a proposal related to this. Not sure what time the caucus was going to end. Our language was a little bit more simplified. Feel free to disregard it. This is good work, and we're appreciative of it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Mark, you have the floor.
Yeah, so I'll join my fellow negotiators in thanking you for great work. This is a very small technical detail, but there's a Roman at 3 where it says disclose the estimated time and courses that would be needed to replace the courses for which the institution declined to award credit under the paragraph. As you mentioned, Jeff, recently, it may be for a course that the institution doesn't offer or wouldn't be relevant. So I would suggest putting comma where appropriate or when appropriate, something like that, because there may be a course that's declined that there is no replacement for it.
Can you repeat the section, Mark?
We don't have page numbers and we don't have all the sections. It's a Roman at 3. it's the third page, second item on the top of the page. Yeah, so just suggesting it should be where appropriate, because it may be that the course doesn't need to be repeated. It's just that the course is not relevant and would not be appropriate for that program.
Or perhaps that the institution doesn't offer a comparable course
Right, yeah.
that could replace it.
Yeah, so friendly suggestion.
I think that's a good note. I think you actually hit on something that's important with this. Somebody else raised the issue of comparability and applicability earlier. I think we had a really interesting conversation about that last night. You could have a course that's applicable but not comparable, or comparable but not applicable. Somebody talked about the transfer policies with like the service academies and how they generally don't accept a lot of transfer credit because, you know, credit earned might be applicable towards the degree, but it's not comparable, because what you're really getting generally there is the training to become an officer. Whereas likewise, we talked about the situation of freshman orientation classes, like the 1 hour survey that's common. Those are comparable. They're basically the same everywhere, but they're not necessarily applicable for transfer credit. And I think that this plays into that, but you pointed out a very interesting little nuance that we hadn't thought about. So.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Jake. Michael, you have the floor.
Thank you for this excellent work. And I just, I think it's a great example of good faith negotiation and coming together and listening to one another and hearing what the concerns are and trying to come up with something that really works. And I think this really does that. Just one question. Do you see this in any way potentially limiting an accreditor or an institution's ability to accept credits beyond what's articulated here? For example, if it was an unaccredited institution, even though it wouldn't have an impact with federal financial aid or something along those lines, you don't see anything here that would limit an institution or accreditor's ability to have, I'll call it more liberal policies, as long as, again, it's looking at applicability and comparability and appropriate.
Yeah, no, I don't think, and I mean, I know institutions, some institutions pride themselves on the credits. And in fact, there are some representatives from some of those institutions in the audience. So, but I will, I think that, and then it doesn't also affect credit for prior learning as well.
Thank you, Jeff. AD, you have the floor.
Thank you. Clarification and a question. First of all, thank you again. I think that we're doing some really big stuff. If things here, they'll make it easier for students to transfer credits. When you were reviewing it in 4, award transfer credits for undergraduate programs, just to clarify, the original language and until now had general education requirements or electives. In the department's version right now, it would apply to all undergraduate credits. There's no limitation was taken off.
Yes, correct. We thought that that was actually superfluous. So those qualifiers. So it's all undergraduate, because general education or electives. What else do you have?
Major.
We had a discussion about the major credits. So saying this would apply to all.
Well, you could transfer all of it, but I mean, it still says in accordance with its academic standards and curricular requirements. So if you're required to have so many of your classes for your major taken at that institution, that's the limit on it. So, but you could still transfer those credits in. So that's what Jeff is saying. It's superfluous. We think that catch-all at the end should already cover that issue.
Okay. I just wanted, like I was talking to some people before, I just, whenever we're changing some language that's been in there from the beginning, and people, then the minute after, like in 48 hours, this thing, passes and we get consensus, then somebody says, oh, wait, what'd you do? Want to make sure that there's no other ramifications for some institutions or others that we're not aware of, but it is a change from before. Okay.
Thank you, AD. Siri, you have the floor.
Just really quickly, I want to echo my colleagues and say thank you so much, Department, for your great work. And I will put a plug in for a particular state like Florida that's had great policies at the college and at the university level. And I'm excited that the rest of the United States can have similar policies.
Thank you, Siri. Monty, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Very quickly, item 668.43, Romanet 5. Jeff, I just you mentioned credit for prior learning. Is that the section where you would anticipate credit for prior learning being captured?
No, I believe it's already, it's captured, in 4. That's already there.
I'm sorry.
So it doesn't change that. And that also would include, in the cases of folks that served in the armed services,
see it now.
credit for that as well.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you, Monty. Thank you, Jeff. AD, did you have something additional? Okay. Are there any additional comments or questions?
And I know people, have heaped some praise on us, but the praise really goes to Dave and Bill for all their work on this and working with their constituencies and giving us something that was workable. So it's a big win for students. So thank you.
In celebration, should we add 9 months to our lunch, or 9 minutes to our lunch? I'm already celebrating. Should we go to lunch?
Yeah,
Please.
you got it. All right. Thank you.
Let's break for lunch. See you at 1.